Okay, this is the contemporary artist panel. My name is Miquel Askren, and I'm Sinshan from Metlakatla, Alaska. I'm also a doctoral student at the University of British Columbia in art history, specifically our art history on the coast from historic to contemporary. And it is my honor today to have been asked to moderate this session, and I really feel that there's been so many important issues that have come up in this conference, and we're all still absorbing them, that rather than having a set series of questions for the artists, or I think that because of this event, we're going to have a lot to talk about, and to keep the dialogue open, and who knows how many subjects that we're going to cover, and even to the point where I feel, because everyone on our panel has connections to different communities, then rather than introducing them myself, I would like them to introduce themselves in the way that they feel is most appropriate. So I'll start on this end of the table.
Thank you. My name is Tommy Joseph. I'm local Sitka carver here. I work at the Southeast Alaska Indian Cultural Center. This summer will be my 17th season as a demonstrational instructor. I entertain the tourists a lot and answer any questions they might have. But anyways, I'm Kagwantan. Sitka is my home. I'm originally from Ketchikan.
Excuse me, I'm just having a bad headache. Hi, I'm Clarissa Hudson. I'm originally from Juneau, and I've been living in Colorado for the last 14 years, and this is my sixth day back into the States. Into Alaska, I'm reestablishing my residency, and it's great to be home. Starting it off with this grand conference has been truly a nice transition, actually a wonderful transition. I'm a chocat weaver, a multimedia artist.
Good afternoon, and thank you for being here. It looks like a nice crowd for this workshop, so I'm really pleased. I think one of the struggles I have as a contemporary artist is realizing the justification for my work, and so with so many people here today, I think that it really is supportive, and I appreciate you being here. My name is Tanis S'eiltin. I am Coho, belong to Whale House, and am of the Raven moiety. I've been away from home for quite a while, even though my mom spoke fluent Tlingit, Maria Miller. I don't have that capability. And I grew up working with her doing what's considered traditional work, skin sewing, beading, drying fish, things like that. And ended up moving away from that, and now I do contemporary work with garbage. Found objects, test tubes and rocks and things like that. And I started doing that because I couldn't afford bronze. So now I know that I really have an affinity for those things, and I use them to make statements that a larger audience might be able to associate with, and still like to talk about my cultural heritage in those works. So, welcome.
My name is Mike Dangeli. My Nisga'a name is Gatsabel. I'm from the House of Beading in the Nass River Valley of northern British Columbia. I grew up in Juneau and Ketchikan, and actually graduated high school in Metlakatla. I bounced back and forth between Alaska and Canada because my family never recognized the borders. I make my living as an artist and carver. I too am a contemporary artist. I began learning the art from my grandparents, Reggie and Louise Dangeli, and my mother, and apprenticed with my uncle and a few other people. And I think what we're doing here today is important work, and I'm very honored to sit with such distinguished artists.
Preston Singletary, Tlingit, nach Cochain do a SOK. Sierra Kwana Yachat, Kagwantana Hutsiti. That's all the Tlingit I know. This is sort of like a coming home for me because I'm the grandson of George Bartlett and Susie Johnson, who came from Sitka. And in the early 20s, my great grandfather was killed in an industrial accident, and then my great grandmother Susie Johnson remarried a Filipino man and moved to Seattle, and she was with us. She lived to 100 years old, and she always talked about where we came from, and so coming here, it feels really comfortable. It's really nice to be here. I grew up in the Seattle area, and I grew up learning the process of blowing glass. So everything I do is glass, blown glass sculpture, and I integrate the Tlingit designs into glasswork. And for those of you who haven't seen anything, I brought a little catalog that you can take a look at. So after learning about glass blowing and playing music most of my life, my young life, in my younger life, I guess, I decided to try to do work that was a little bit more personal, and that's when I looked to Northwest Coast Art and started to quickly try to figure out how to integrate the designs into the glass work. And I've gained a fair bit of notoriety from doing this, and have not shown a whole lot in Alaska, but I show in other parts of the country. And so one of the things that my grandmother talked to me about, one of the last conversations I was able to have with her before she was incapacitated and fell into a coma for a number of years. She was never the same. She says if anybody were to look at her life's history or her life, then they would have to look at her grandchildren. So what I do today has a much deeper meaning for me, is I try to connect with what I do and presenting Tlingit art in a new material of glass.
So I know that for each of us, because this is in a way our homecoming, and I know that you live here in Sitka, and Clarissa, you're so fortunate to now have the opportunity to move back home. But for each of us coming back and forth and bringing what we do as artists or art historians back to our communities and sharing it, as is the title of this conference, and sharing our knowledge, I just wanted to really discuss some of the, I guess, most important moments or lessons that each of us have felt from the time, the sessions we witnessed, or the sessions we spoke at, or the people, the conversations that have come up through running into each other at the hotels over dinner. I know that each of us have had really important moments caused by this conference, and if each of you can just share one of those moments today with our audience, and then we'll discuss. It's like I'm imagining I'm like the Simshan, Sally, Jesse, Raphael right now. I'm not Oprah. It's not. I hope it's not Jerry Springer. So So I kept them apart just enough to intervene if I have to. I got my Nux, my fiance right there, keep you guys in line. So if you can share some of your experience of this conference.
I've only been to a few of the lectures and talks, and I think most was the research, the time that everybody else, the people that were presenters, the work that they put into and studying and seeing and them sharing with everybody here. It's an awesome experience. I have lots of questions and things I'd like to talk to them about and their research and what got them going where they are, who they are and what they do. Just questions, more questions.
I really enjoyed this conference. I've demonstrated our art at different conferences everywhere from Florida to Alaska and overseas. I've danced. Miquel and I lead a traditional, or I guess a northern dance group. It's been a real experience, as this is the first time I've attended and sat and listened to many of the talks. The amount of research and work is staggering. Having a Knox who's an art historian and meeting all these really awesome people and listening to people like Clarissa talk about the experiences that some of us have shared by going to collections and having all these range of emotions, you can't help but put it into your work. When I sat here and listened to the artists present their work here the other day, I immediately wished I had brought my tools. I wanted to get busy and start creating again. I think all of us can agree that we're not happy unless we're creating something and inspired by what we do, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And this conference has presented all of that. And as artists, it's our responsibility to show the good and the bad and the ugly. And I look forward to the work that each one of us, or people out there who do their art, whether it be in wood or in paper, or in glass, or in textiles, or even in words. I look forward to what this conference is inspired people to do.
Well, this is a real challenge to share with you what I have experienced or what has impacted me here. It's so overwhelming. But I do have about 1,500 photographs that I'll take home and maybe film them and see how they dance. But anyway, this has been an amazing experience, and I would like to just do a little overview and let you know how I feel about what has happened and what I think is so important. And only having attended memorial parties when I was small, and then leaving home and not being able to participate for years, it's just been really rewarding to come back. And I think what's real important is that I've been acknowledged. I am a member of a community that is so rich in culture and history, and I really appreciate the fact that elders open their arms to people who are coming back, that they encourage the young, that they are open to having non-natives share their knowledge with us, and vice versa. So I really feel fortunate for being here. And I think one of the main things that I'm really impressed by is the fact that there's so much to share, and that it has been done in such a respectful way. And again, I think that what's real interesting is that this is a venue where mistakes are allowed to be made, and that humility is also really important, and that we can come back and try again if we've offended somebody. So this to me seems like it's the Tlingit way. And another thing that I'd like to share is that I'm so impressed with the scientific community that is here and the work that they're doing to rewrite, to deconstruct, to pull the pedestal out from under some of these major ethnographers that saw our work mainly as objects, for the most part, without a context. And so bringing back some of the missing pieces and sharing them with us. They're the ones that are able to afford, perhaps, to go to archives, to go to these places, to fly out to remote islands, to do digs, and to find information that's missing. And that's really, really inspiring. So I have really appreciated all of it. And as far as an artist, one of the things that I think that is most moving is the oral traditions and the metaphors that are used. So I have always just been a visual artist and have never felt confident using words. And I think I'm going to give it a try. So I just wanted to share with you the first idea that came to me was to create a PowerPoint presentation or some artwork based on a couple of the experiences, the major two experiences that I've had, I think that could be used as an umbrella to encapsulate everything. And the first experience is leaving the Seattle airport, walking down that, the walkway and into a big salmon. Being a coho, I was just so impressed with the eyes and the scales and the huge fins, and then to walk inside and sit in there with other Northwest Coast family members was just amazing. And so here's a coho flying into town, into Sitka, where there's a coho clan house. So I'm really back home. And then the next morning, walking down the street with my warm muffin and having all these ravens following me. And so I just was thinking, I'm not going to give you this terrible food. There's no nutrition to it. The butter might be good. It's warm. And then just tossing it eventually, maybe half a block down the road, I tossed a piece out. Sure enough, they clambered down and picked it up and then flew off. And so my metaphor is going to be flying with salmon and walking with raven. And so I feel like all of us inside that salmon are like little eggs. And I can't wait to see what hatches.
Andy Hope, this is a great clan conference. I just wanted to let you know. Of all the gatherings, like celebration, even our artist gathering that we did last year and that we plan on doing every year during celebration, I mean, I haven't been to a native public function like this ever. I'm a little bit dingy right now because I have a really pounding headache that came on as soon as I sat down. I've never been to a native function such as this one. This has been pretty dang cool. The educational experience, the inspiration, the camaraderie, the negative stuff that have come out and that have been, beginning to resolve and heal. I mean, I know that many of our artists and dancers, singers, writers, all of them are going to be walking away from here totally inspired. All the scientists, the museum people, the coordinators for the event. When this kind of thing happens to this magnitude, at this level, you can't help but everyone rise up together. I tell you, I'm going to have gobs of button ropes coming out of my ears as far as the designs go. I mean, I brought several to work on while I was up here. No. Put those aside. I want to utilize the inspiration that I have gathered here from day one, arriving here in Sitka. Even before I got here, as soon as we got on that boat in Prince Rupert, there was a major shift. Canada was very treacherous. I wasn't sure if I was going to make it. In fact, there's a part of me that feels like I died on that treacherous highway from Vancouver through Whistler, and don't you ever do that. Don't you ever go there. There's a part of me that woke up this morning and I thought, this is so good. The last several days here. But I think I died somewhere along that highway, in that I've been born into this other reality that just got way too good. It was kind of a weird feeling, weird thought, but I know that maybe some of you can relate to that. Yesterday, get this. All of us have experienced this, and I know that. Because you just can't help it. Here we are. For 2 hours, for 2 solid hours, I just stood in one place. And like Bob Sam, he was describing it last night. Oh, I was being pulled this way. I was being pulled this way. People telling me to come this way and that way. I just stood for 2 solid hours, people coming to me, overlapping, wanting to talk about this, talk about that, this idea, that idea. This praise, this negative comment, or negative thought that they had to overcome, whatever it was. It was an astounding experience to just stay in one place and see what comes to you. I was into samurai for a couple of years. Samurai, the sword, like The Last Samurai. Whew. I love samurai. Samurai loves me. But it's true. It's a two-way street, man. And okay, why am I talking about samurai? What point am I getting to? Well, I got this disease that made me have to quit. Anyways, in the samurai, Korean samurai, they say they had it before the Japanese. The Chinese had it first, they lost it, the Korean kept it up, they lost it, the Japanese perfected it. Japanese, they always perfect everything, but they ain't going to perfect our art. They can't help it any. We have the spirit that comes from the land, place-based education. So there's this phrase that's called, that we say, and when we bow, we stand like this, and we acknowledge from the heart and push outward. And we say, Kamsamada Anigaseo. And we say that to each other. We bow. Kamsamada Anigaseo means, in English translation, means thank you. But in Korean translation means, I see all the good things that come to me. I see it. I acknowledge it. I recognize and acknowledge it. I appreciate it. It comes to me, and it is good. And that's what all of us are to each other right here in this space. That's what this shelter is in this space. That's what this landscape, this weather even, oh my God, I haven't seen the sun in days, is in this space, in this now, in this place, this is what we are to each other. This is what we are to the landscape. Kamsamada, Anigaseo, Kunachish.
Well, I know I shouldn't have gone last. I could talk about Aikido. Aikido, that's my martial art. But even in Aikido, they have, you're working from the left and the right side. It's almost like the eagle and the raven. And there's a balance there. It's finding a balance within in the world. And I grew up in a different world. And I came late to the party, by the way. I came yesterday afternoon about 6 o'clock, so I missed out on a lot of this. But I did want to come up here. I'm here now. I let my gallery in New Mexico rope me into attending an art opening, which is, it was kind of a bust. It wasn't even good business, but it was really, in retrospect, I would have much rather have been here. And as I mentioned, since this is where my family originated from, my mother's side, I wanted to come here, and I wanted to, I was here once when I was 17 for an afternoon. I lived in Juneau for a summer when I was 17. And growing up in Seattle, I grew up obviously outside of the traditional region that I would have maybe been engrossed in this process, this, being here in this comfortable house and experiencing all that I could. So it was a long time coming around, but it finally came back to me in about 1987, and it caused me to. I met a fellow from Haynes who saw me, working with my glass work and trying to put the designs onto it, the glass, and he said, "Oh, you like the Northwest Coast art, huh?" And I said, "Yeah, well, it's part of my background." And his name is David Svensson. He lived in Haynes for about 10 years and worked with the carvers up there. We met at the Pilchuck Glass School. And so he encouraged me on this path that I eventually put myself on. The reason for endeavoring to do this, I had to connect with other Native artists and show people what I was doing and get input to what I was doing. And as being in Seattle, you come into contact with different artists. And I remember meeting a carver one time who I was just a young kid, and I was very beginnerish, and I said, "So do you teach people?" And he goes, "I don't work with amateurs." He says you just spend double the time trying to clean up what they messed up. And I was like, he's a really well respected artist, and I'm not even going to name him, but he's one of the best. And that kind of surprised me. I was like, gosh, what so-and-so said. Another artist, he said, "Is why, this tradition of learning the carving process is handed down, through generations. Why would somebody take that attitude?" And so that instantly made me realize where, different people are coming from their artwork. I was fortunate enough to find mentors in my life who have, given me insight to what it is that I'm trying to do, and have opened my eyes to a lot of things. But coming here and being here for just not even 24 hours yet, it's just amazing because I'm just standing out the front door, and everybody's really friendly. everybody's coming up to me and asking me questions, and like, where are you from? And I tell them, we have to start up a conversation. Old people, young people, it's been really incredible. And if there's anything that I've learned through the people that I have worked with and my mentors, and through the different sort of ceremonial things that I've participated in, the Sweat Lodge in particular, is to speak from your heart. And that's the best you can do. And the better you try to do that, the better your life can become. And so that's what I try to do as best I can. And so being here is really wonderful. And I'm good friends with Clarissa and some other people who are trying to organize these artist gatherings. And I'm sure that just with Clarissa's energy, I'll probably be able to feed off that a little bit and get more insight and stories that have come from this process of being here. And just last night, hearing the stories and seeing these amazing dance groups and everything is it's food for my soul. It feels really good, and I look forward to participating in future gatherings like this.
Thank you. That was all very, very inspiring, and I want to make sure that because I know that in our communities, it seems that sometimes what artists do, what they do for a living, or whether it's just for the community, their processes or their philosophies behind their creation is sometimes kept amongst themselves because they feel sort of different about the way that they look at the world and feel that the people they can share it with are each other. So I want to really make sure that this isn't just a dialogue amongst them. And I know it's really early to open it up for questions, but I feel it's important to go to you, to the people in the audience, if you have questions, to make this a dialogue for all of us. So if you have questions, because this is also being recorded, if you can come down here, I would appreciate it. Gerry.
Hi, Gail. I'm usually real shy, but I thought I'd break out of my mold and say a few words in public. One of the things that I have enjoyed is being on the Southeast Indian Cultural Center board here in town at Pleasant Park. We had, as part of our process throughout the year, it's good to see Tommy being one of the artists from the Cultural Center to be on the panel. I want to turn my back to the artists. Miquel made me do it.
No. Look both ways.
So, but I don't have two heads, I just have one. So I try to break away from my conversation with Miquel here. I wanted to really put this as a food for thought kind of challenge to not only our artists in the panel here, but to us as Native people. One of the things that we got in feedback in our strategic planning process from people like Ellen Hope Hayes, who was one of the originators of getting that going through the SitkaGrew, that cultural center, and artists in the community here, was the discussion about what the art represents. And it seems like when it originally started to what it is now, there has been a very serious transition, and that is forgetting our roots, forgetting the purpose of the art. I told them a story about a Northwest Coast artist when I worked in public radio in Ketchikan. And I interviewed a person who, this individual, and I asked him, what is your traditional background? He told me. And I asked him, do you know the stories behind your carvings and your artwork? He said, no, I don't. I just like the artwork. And this is a Native American. So my challenge and my question to the panel and to us, do we think that is good enough? Does that represent our culture? Do you think there's a responsibility to know the story behind your artwork? The responsibility of the culture that that art represents?
Thank you for your question, Gerry. Who would like to respond first? Clarissa?
That's a really good question, Gerry. What does our art represent? That's what I understand. It's that question that's one of the things that instigated the artist gathering that we started last year. The other thing that instigated the artist gathering was Preston did not meet Bob Sam after 3 days of celebration. He says, the celebration was fun and great, but I didn't get to meet Bob Sam. And I said, Bob Sam was standing right here, dude. You didn't know that was Bob Sam? So he said, that's it. All the other artists in Southeast Alaska and all the way down the coast have got to meet Preston Singletary and welcome him home. And vice versa. Everyone's got to meet each other. It's very important that the artists make connections to help support just the way we think and the way we are. What does our art represent? Okay, that was number one, the purpose of the artist gathering, is to gather the artists together. Number two, the other purpose was to get those artists together and to remind them of our initial intention and purpose of why we do the kind of art that we do and why we put it on everything that we have. Our regalia, the homes, all the utilitarian things like the basketry, the carved spoons, all of these things. One of the main purposes, I feel, that our art does for us is it tells our clan histories and stories. It speaks about the transitions that may be going on, whether they be personal, clan, or intercultural transitions that we have been experiencing for many years, not just when the white man came, but when the Hawaiians came, when the other Native people migrated across and came to Alaska, or the ones that came down from the interior and went on down. There's always cultural changes whenever you get, two different people who operate differently together. It's just like a man and woman when they come together to live together. My God. Major changes. I lived with a man for 35 years. I'm still going through those changes. And I do artwork based on that relationship. So, the Northwest Coast tribes we are distinctive in that we portray more than just a box, more than just a blanket, more than just a basket, more than just a house. We have ancestral backup history that tells us who we are and where we come from. We can put on a robe that our grandfather or grandmother wore, or our great-great-grandmother wore. So one of the intentions of the artist gathering was to come together and do this particular exercise, this particular improvisational artistic exercise that we go through in taking an issue, a cultural issue or a personal issue, and working together to create an image that tells that story, because that's what our artwork does. It tells the story of the land, the people, the animals, the spirits, the unseen world, this physical world. And through that exercise, it helps the artist, it reminds the artist to come back to that. Instead of just creating a spoon that has a wolf on it, create a spoon that has a wolf on it that tells a story. We have, in this way, we have the tangible physical object that shows the future generations not just our history, but also any transitions that we have gone through, and it sets the example for what they can do. Because I tell you what, I'm not an artist by mistake. I'm an artist because I'm mentally ill. I was mentally ill because of all kinds of things that happened as a child, a young adult growing up. That's why I had to leave Alaska. I had to get away and just focus in on my own work and self and heal. And my best pieces are those where I was in that transition of healing. And so many people can relate to some of those images and they don't even understand what it's about. They're hit with it right here. And it affects their lives. And that's what our artwork does. It affects other people's lives like you don't even know it. You're just doing it for yourself, for your own self-healing, and then you just kind of put it out there, and it helps pay for the bread and butter, and helps pay for your trip back and forth to Alaska, maybe. And we are blessed with that kind of power and imagery and resource and history. And doggone it, somebody said I made that line last night during my presentation. We're good. And we're different up here in the Northwest Coast. Damn good. Good Jeez.
Stories, the work we do, I think everything I do has got a story behind it, why I'm doing it, what I'm doing. I do a lot of large work, or I think that's what I enjoy doing the most, or big totem poles, little totem poles, just big size work. Some of the stories are reproduction that I've been commissioned to do, or ancient stories, but I think the most fun for me personally are stories up to date. A couple years ago, I did a 20-foot totem pole with a group of high school students. The kids wrote the story, came to me, read me the story, and based on all their input, I helped them to design their stories, and we all carved it together. That was a very cool experience. I believe for them it wasn't for me. I know that there's stories behind everything we do. Yeah, sometimes I help people to write their stories today based on who they are, where they're from, what they're doing, their history, their life history. It's all about the stories.
Thank you. I guess I have a real quick answer for your question as to whether or not these young people and maybe older people doing Tlingit designs, whether or not they should know the meaning, right? That was a question. And most definitely, I think that they should know the meaning. And if they don't know the meaning, encourage them to learn. Direct them in ways that they can find the meaning, and also maybe people, stories, different things. And just to backtrack a little bit here, I think that what's really important about this conference is that there are so many resources here. I realize that we don't have to do everything ourselves, that we don't have to learn everything there is to learn about misappropriation, about exploitation, about the histories that we have, that we're all here as a community, and me being away from home for so long and being an instructor and being asked if I would teach what it's like to be Indian. I don't know where to start, but I try to do everything. But anyway, the point is that we're a community, and I think we should encourage each other and allow for people to learn and understand the history, that there's been major gaps, that these, the meanings and the lifestyles prior to contact have been, were in place and really strong, and there's been a major interruption, and we're regaining momentum, and I think that we need to encourage everybody. So yes, I think it's important that we know the histories, and what I learned today is that in Western terms, our stories have been called legends and myths, but I would like to say that there are histories, and this is what's important. As a contemporary artist, I really struggle with where I fit in. As a traditional artist, my work would be set, it would be solid, it would be understood, it would have a place, it would have purpose. And I really learned the meaning of atu while I was here. That's what it's about. It's about life. And as a contemporary artist, I have a long history of understanding from my mother and from living around other artists. We'll say my uncle's name, Leo Jacobs. I learned a lot from him, but anyway, I learned the importance of our symbols and how they work in potlatch and how they carry history. As a contemporary artist trying to make it in the mainstream, there's so much opposition, there's so much conflict in the mainstream world. You're promoting yourself, you're an individual, you sell yourself. The items that you make are about you and maybe nothing, and it sells. And that's what's promoted. As an Indigenous artist, as a Alaska Native artist, as a Tlingit artist, if I title myself Tlingit, I don't fit in the mainstream because the label forbids me to be accepted in a world where my images have a big history. If I was accepted in the mainstream and made work about nothing, I might get hundreds of thousands of dollars to start foundations because I was able to video what the rats do in my studio at night, something like that, something as absurd as that. So we're really, I think, walking a fine line. I feel like I have to understand how to present symbols that represent stories of conquest, stories of resistance, stories of survival, and still not sell atu to the world. So how do you do that? I was real hesitant to use the war helmet from Dry Bay in my work because I was in a community that couldn't tell me whether or not I could do that. But at the same time, living in Bellingham, I see our work being exploited and no one's asking for permission. So I said, the hell with it, I'm going to do it. And I realized from a little bit of the research that I did that the war helmet came from Dry Bay, where my great-grandmother's from. And it has been identified as belonging to the Raven moiety. Excuse me. So I used it and I just drew it, and it's a duplication. And I get compliments about it all the time, and I'm not bragging. What I'm trying to tell you is that the artist who created this piece was a genius, and all I did was a duplicate. And it's very much like taking a salmon out of the river and putting it on the fire and then serving it, and people say, "You're such a good cook." It's the same thing. The war helmet is not mine, it's ours, and it's amazing, and in my work I'm honoring it. So that's a short answer.
I wanted to answer that as well. I don't know if Preston wanted to, or we take more questions. But the main thing that we need to say is the art is us. The art is us. In the past, I was always taught that we didn't have a written form of language. That our written form of language was on our regalia, was our masks, was the use of songs. And this is our history. This is our language, all intertwined with our protocols, with our ceremonies, with an understanding of who we are as human beings and where we are within the cosmos. And for somebody to say they don't know what they mean is a fault not only on them, but on their teacher who taught them the art. But at the same time, it's a fault on him for not knowing his own personal history. You hear all of us talking about our histories. I heard you talk about mental issues, and all of us have issues with everything in life. Everything. But things that happen to us as children, things that happen to us as we're young adults or adults, and these traumas or anything. And that gets incorporated with our art. I don't know about the rest of you guys, but I know wood carvers, we spend a lot of time by ourselves. You either deal with it or you go, what we say, momps in our language, crazy. And sometimes there's days when you're momps, and then some days you deal with it. And that's all part of us, our art. At a potlatch that I hosted, I took on the title of Get Sonk. Get Sonk is a member of a secret society of artists and carvers. And at this potlatch, I talked about the word traditional. I think that is one of the most misused words, a misunderstood word, next to, and a word that is used that people don't have the full, complex understanding of what that word means next to I love you. It's a joke, but it's not at the same time. These things are a way of healing. They are all of us. So that art, again, is us. Whether they do glass, whether they do weaving, whether they do things with blood vials and talk about the injustices of our blood quantum that is set up upon us to say what is traditional and what is not by outsiders. Defining us as Aboriginal people is just wrong. The art is us.
Through all of my connections with my artist friends and again, sort of growing up in Seattle area, I had to go to other people to, get guidance from what I was doing. And I think one of the things that Clarissa told me that, that it's all connected. The artwork relates to the stories, relates to the dances and the songs, just what Miquel was saying. And, my mentors or mentor that I have, Joe David is my good friend who's a real great master carver, and he said once you become a keeper of cultural knowledge, it becomes a responsibility. And so it's up to us to live up to that responsibility and to be able to present whatever we do, whether it's contemporary art. I'm really fascinated with the notion of contemporary art because that, also Joe was commenting one time, we had a glass show, a Native American glass show. There was 18 artists that were featured, and we had asked him to stand up and say something at the exhibition. He said that, the needs of the people, or the art, traditionally, the Northwest Coast artwork is produced out of wood, and he said that the wood is becoming increasingly more rare. I mean, at some point it may become but the needs of the people to tell the stories will come through other materials. Just because of that need to continue to tell the stories, and I thought that was really a nice way of looking at it. I think we should have another question.
Great answers. I think what I really appreciate, and I know about Bob, but I know I also. Are you sure? Okay. We're doing pretty good. We're supposed to go to 3:30, so we have some time. But one thing that I really appreciate about all of your answers is that each of you work in. This group works in very diverse mediums, from glass to wood to, installation work and video to, Clarissa works in so many different mediums with painting and weaving and regalia, and then your work with the helmets and the daggers, and across this whole table, the issues of contemporary, what is contemporary, traditional, and whatever people label them as contemporary artists or traditional artists or label their work. One thing I think that is obvious in this conversation is that they're all coming from the same place. They're all reflecting through these different mediums who we are, where we come from, the issues that are important to us. And I just thank you, Larry, for Gerry, for that wonderful, wonderful question. It really brought out a lot of important issues, and also for I had asked you to look at both, and that was not out of disrespect at all. It's just the questions that we're asking here today are just as important in the conversation for our audience and as our artists. So on to the next question. Okay, so we'll let Bob go first. Bob Sam.
Thank you. I'm only responding because my name was mentioned in this room. Preston, my name is Bob Sam, and I'm glad to meet you. Ish, can you come down? I'll go. I want Ish to stand with me. What I'd like to say is regarding the spoken word. The spoken word is a Northwest Coast art form. The human voice was designed to be pleasing to your ears. The spoken word creates a spirit behind what the other artists are doing. It puts a spirit into the wood, into the silver, into the fabric. The spoken word of our ancestors are beautiful. And Alaska Native people, Alaska Native women, and Alaska Native men, we have some of the most beautiful words and the most beautiful voices you will ever hear. I'm leaning on this guy right now because he's the next generation of the spoken word. And I spent many years with this guy. We have a program called Beyond Heritage. And what I'd like to respond to Gerry's question, leaning on his nephew, is when it really comes down to it, we are in a renaissance right now with these wonderful artists and with the storytellers. We are in a renaissance. People come from all over the world just to see our art form. The Northwest Coast art forms are considered the best in the world because we are the best, and the people all over the world are coming to see us right now. And I want to close by talking personally to my friend Ish. Ish, continue on your work and move forward with what you do. And I want to publicly apologize to you for any harm that I've done to you. And I want to hold you up. I want to hold you up. Because you are the next generation of storytellers. And we are just as good as they are. Because we have the spoken word. Kanishtish.
Just thanks so much, Bob. I truly just moved to hear that. I also apologize, Bob, and it's really important for me to also acknowledge you in your work in the community. You're a gifted storyteller, and you move people with your words. You're an example of what you just talked about. We're all, like we all were talking about earlier, everyone has made mistakes or stepped on people's toes and may have offended people. And I may have done that during this conference. And I continually ask for your permission to fail, your support, and your forgiveness.
Using the language that is not ours, to express so much of our perspectives and our worldview and our issues and empower ourselves through a medium that is communicable between so many different colors and races. I have an appreciation for your work, and I also have an appreciation for the words that these artists inspire amongst people all over the world, internationally. And I would just like to open the floor to either more questions or have either or have our artists talk about some of the issues, either the issues of contemporary, traditional, modern, those words that have been imposed upon them, or how they see their use of their own words in describing their artwork and really adjusting or challenging those categories or labels. So unless someone else has a question. Hi, Auntie. I'll let my auntie go first.
My auntie too.
I know, I'm related. I'm finding out I'm related to everyone in Sitka too. I didn't know that. My Uncle David, is he still here? That was really nice of him to stand up. Auntie.
So this is all right, and I'll try to speak with the speaker's voice.
Ellen, I need the mic,
Read the CD.
please.
For in memorial.
Not anymore. I'd like to know your perspective, or think about your perspective as it's developing, either one, because things do change over time. And especially when the 20 years rolls around, and 30 years rolls around. And the cultural center that we know in Sitka is the Southeast Alaska Indian Cultural Center. And for the first number of years, it was used by the Alaska Native Brotherhood, who had the contract to run the cultural center. It was our proposal. We put our kind of pressure on them. And we had teachers like they were waiting back here who laid the groundwork for us, who were ready to work at that program. A.P. Johnson's one of them, I'll mention his name. Ed James, Esther Littlefield, Pete Nielsen. They wanted to make this work, and they were great hosts and hostesses. They looked good, they talked good, and their main purpose was to teach. And it was to transfer meaning and to keep the culture moving forward. Now that's years ago now, and the contract says we're to demonstrate for the visitors during the visitor season. That's like May through September. And it isn't so much teaching our children as it is teaching some part of the art form and how it fits in the culture. But mostly they're going through in the season in about 12 minutes, maybe, something like that. So what's your perspective going to be about the role of cultural centers by Indigenous people, tribes? Where should we be going? Indian education is another one. We have had Indian education programs funded from the school system, from the tribe, and from the federal government. And the purpose of Indian education we've become familiar with, and it's dancing and singing, performing, and other things that aren't as visible. So there are just two things. One, the parent committee. What would you think the parent committee should be doing now in the year 2007? The parent committee these days, and since the beginning in 1974, are called the parent committee. I don't know whether they make policy or not. It needs evaluation and study to see if what we're all seeing here in the last few days can be applied in some way to Sitka Native Education or Indian Education Act and the contracts that we have for running cultural centers. I think we only have 2 or 3 in Alaska. They're steady. They have limited funding, not a lot of funding, but they have continuing funding. So those are the kind of thoughts I just want to present and have you think about it, because change is happening, and it's not just for tourism. There's another mechanism for tourism now. Thank you.
Is wants to start with that question in particular? Okay, Clarissa?
I come up with these ideas and I just want to, I throw them out there to friends and colleagues and stuff like that and fellow artists. That's a very good question, Ellen. I have an idea. I mean, before I answer it, I have an idea. No, I'll tell that idea after I answer it. But remind me that the idea has to do with Ellen's face, okay? I've been teaching chokat weaving for 20 years. Beginner chokat weaving for 20 years. And then, intermittently, when a weaver needs my assistance, I will provide them information, spur of the moment, or when I get up to Alaska or whatever. But recently, I have turned over the teaching of beginning chokat weaving over to one of my apprentices, Chloe French, out of Bellingham. That's because I want to focus on teaching the intermediate weavers, the ones who already have some experience, because I want to support them in getting to a place where they feel comfortable in starting and completing a chokat robe. Now, with that said, the other reason why I want to not teach beginners is that they take a lot of work. And I want to move on to other things like creating a holistic cultural center in Haines. And that's one of my meetings that we're going to talk about this afternoon with Aldona, Megan, Preston, Tanis, myself, Donna, Jean, because we're going to have this meeting with them. Several of us are going to be in Haines, and we're going to talk to AIA, Alaska Indian Arts, where Lee Heidenberg first started. It's a little slow right now. We want to expound on it, and then there's another organization that wants to do the same thing. It's a nonprofit organization up there. We have a nonprofit as well. It's called Artstream Cultural Resources. You can look on the website, artstream.net, for some of the projects that we're sponsoring. I think it's very important that we have Indian studies in the sense of holistic Indian studies. We've been doing a lot of white studies most of our lives. And intermittently, we've, done so-called the native studies. In answering the question here, it's very important to me to teach, yes, the song and dance, and yes, the visual arts, but also the subsistence arts, the gathering from the land and the sea, the protocol arts, the arts of how to conduct a potlatch, the naming of people, how to read the waters when you're on the ocean or on the river. How do you know how to safely pass through an inlet and be familiar with those things? A holistic approach to the native way of being and native education. The healing arts, the various healing arts, whether it's the gathering of the herbs. Hooligan is known to help prevent cancer. None of us, have we ever seen how hooligan is derived and rendered? How many of us have seen that and experienced it? Have you even ever talked to anyone who's done it? Same with hearing aids. How many of you have actually gathered your own herring eggs or know someone who's done it. Very few of us. Here we live in this land of abundance. It's not like the Southwest where I live just for the sun. This land is abundant with all kinds of life and activity. It's time that we come together and create cultural centers that are holistic. We have the resources. In every community, we have the resources. Every community has people who know about these things. And even if Sitka becomes the community that knows how to harvest from the sea real good, and Haynes has its main talent of knowing how to harvest the herbs and from the land and medicinal purposes, as well as knowing how to do the shamanic practices, the white light practices. I'm not talking about the dark light, the darkness practices. So, cultural centers are changing, yes. Tourism is not as high as it used to be, especially when things are costing more to travel. The gas is costing more to travel. We have to look to ourselves, to support one another as individuals, as communities, and as an ecosystem and caretakers of this land. These things have always been important to me. I have not always lived the things that were important to me. And I think that a lot of us can relate to that. Many changes are taking place. And like Bob Sam says, it's happening right now. And it's exciting times. And we can see it in the political world. We can see it in the environment. Major changes happening in the environment. Internally, emotionally, mentally, artistically. So cultural centers, yes. Have them be a foundation to lead the way. And it's the people, the leaders, specific leaders in those cultural centers that will help inspire and support those who want to, get on the bandwagon here and let's move along because, man, there's all this movement. We got to jump on. It's heading in that direction. And it's time to do that. Time is now. Oh, her face. Yes, I have this idea. And I ran it by an artist, and I can't remember. We were off to dinner last night. There's four of us off to dinner. And all of a sudden I see Ellen, and she's just speeding right along, just like the way my mother walks down the street. And I watched her as she just cut in front of us and walked past us, and here we are moseying along, so I caught up with her. I says, "Where are you going?" She said, "I'm going to have dinner." I says, "Oh, okay, can we come with you? We'll walk down that way with you." "Sure." So there we are, we end up having the dinner at Kenny's. And she's sitting there next to me, and I'm watching her as she speaks. And I looked at her face, and she has one of the most beautiful faces around here. It is a classic mask almost. I watched that face move, smile, glisten. It was inspiring me, and it was almost like a mask that had come alive. And then I realized all of us have these masks. And that, is there any carver, I don't know if there are, any carvers who are mask makers, who carve the masks of the people around them. And even if they can't do it specifically, to the accurate detail, to get a likeness of that person. Wouldn't that be cool? That would be so cool. Anyway, that was my there you go. It was Ellen Hope that kind of inspired that for me. Thank you, Ellen.
Did anyone else want to respond to her question?
In 1991, I walked into the Southeast Alaska Indian Cultural Center. Ellen Hope was the director of the Culture Center at that time. So she was my first boss at my current job that I've been at. I can't say enough about her. She's been really great. But culture centers today, I know where we were then. I'm not sure where we are now. I don't know what the future holds for ours. I know today, personally, I am who I am in my art through that cultural center and working and learning what I could with the other instructors and teachers that were there and the students. And I know by no means am I a master at anything I do. I'm a student in the art form. I feel that I always will be, but as long as I'm there or wherever I am doing my artwork, I feel obligated to share what I know with the students that come through the door. I have students that come in and out every day almost through the center there. As long as I'm there, the doors are open and they come in and have a cup of coffee, sit down, talk, work on whatever they want to work on. And sometimes we have joint projects, big projects, little ones. It's been a great experience for me. I don't know where our center's headed. Tourism, it's been huge here at our place. I deal with hundreds, sometimes thousands of tourists every day during the summer months. That can be a great experience, can be a trying experience. I don't know what to say. I don't know where things are headed today, but I hope we're able to keep going and keep our culture centers open and create new culture centers. I know I feel that I personally am beginning or trying to outgrow the one I've been at. I'm limited as to what I can do, how big I can do as far as my art form, and maybe it's time to spread my wings a bit and move to a bigger place. I'm not sure what's what, but we need to keep going.
Thank you, Tony.
I spend a lot of time showing my work in other areas of the country, primarily on the West Coast, like in New Mexico, Vancouver, and as I mentioned earlier, not very much in Alaska, but East Coast, Sweden. I've traveled to Japan for my work, showing my work and so forth. And I'm down in the Southwest and interacting with that art market down there. And one thing that I'm really curious about is the fact that they've had this Indian market down there for so many years. It's like maybe 80 years where they have, and of course it's a sunny location. People go there in the summertime. There's lots of resorts and all of this type of thing. It's a big destination, but it's hugely attended. It's like there's maybe, 4,000 artists they're showing on the streets. They have the Institute of American Indian Arts, which educates artists with Western modes of art-making processes, and it's just as an observation, a casual observation. I was down there interacting or showing at this one gallery, Blue Rain Gallery, where Tammy Garcia is a traditional Santa Clara Pueblo potter, and her work is basically that you have to create a lottery for her work because she can't produce enough of it, and they're basically drawing out of a hat to see who's going to have the chance to buy a pot, traditional made pot for $50,000. And then I go down the street looking at one of the booth artists, and I run into Norman Jackson from Ketchikan, and he's got these beautiful, beautiful grease dishes and masks, some of the best examples of Tlingit art, I feel, and they're priced at like $3,000 or $4,000, and he'll be lucky if he sells two in the weekend. But he goes back and does his thing. And I'm just wondering, not that the object is to get your pieces to sell for $50,000 or whatever, maybe that is the goal, but just the awareness that people have of the artwork. And I think that these community centers, if something could be done, I've always had a dream of, and part of that dream I've shared with Clarissa about, these art centers and maybe having a glass blowing studio like in a longhouse, and the furnace would be over, under the central fire pit, and it'd be working, around, and that dynamic process of working together, and that's the key. One thing about glass blowing is it requires a large team to work on, complicated pieces. And that energy is shared by a team of people that you have to cooperate with and sort of dance around. Everybody says when they see glass blowing, it's like you're dancing, and it kind of is in a way because it's very choreographed. And an experienced team, you don't need to speak very much. Everybody kind of intuitively knows what's going on. And I think that's different from a lot of other artistic processes. Maybe wood carving, like Miquel said, maybe sometimes you don't work with people, you're working more by yourself, or a potter, And I think that there's something about when people come together on a team effort, there's energy that's transferred into that piece, and it's reflected in the piece. And so I think, and it's also for the people who can make themselves available for teaching. And that's one thing that I've really been a big advocate of, trying to teach other Native artists about glass blowing. And because I believe that glass brings another dimension to Native American art, no matter what it is. I've worked collaboratively with other artists, Northwest Coast artists, artists from the Southwest, and recently did some work with a Maori artist. And it was really interesting because the Maoris are very, very organized, and they're very powerful. They've actually, moved into areas of politics, their political system in New Zealand, and there's a lot of support. The whole entire government gets behind these big shows that are coming and traveling. They send huge delegations out with like 40, 50 people, and they come out with their warrior entrance and all this, and it's really powerful. And it's really, I think that the communities can get behind sending the artwork out into the world and educating people about it, just, if nothing more, just to kind of show that the Northwest Coast art is, Native American art is something also more than pottery and, paintings and a lot of the contemporary work that's going on out there, just because there's a lot of people that can, I think that if people really were educated about Northwest Coast art, that, more so, then there would be more support. It's about collectors' bases, you have to develop the awareness of it, and the collectors. I have to, face it that, the system for what we do, as the old system that the chiefs would commission the artists to work, and that doesn't happen as much anymore. So we are forced to go to the commercial market. Otherwise we wouldn't be able to support ourselves, and we wouldn't be any good as far as what we do. We need to work, and we need to support ourselves from our work, and we need to be able to, when the time comes, if we're asked to make a special piece for the purpose of ADU or whatever, then we have the skills that are necessary to execute it. Yes?
Yeah, I was waiting to speak for quite some time, but you just hit it right on the button. I'm an artist and I'm starving. And I just don't know how to make that transition. And my work is really, I spend 5 years at a time doing my project. And you seen last night Willard Jackson dancing, and he was wearing army fatigue, and he was wearing these wonderful moccasins that I created. I'm a Athabascan with my mom's side represented in the beadwork on the bottom. And on my father's side, it's the weaving, the Tlingit, the Northwest Coast. So it was put together for me. The project was put together for me. And I'm the only student that completed it. It took me 5 years. And last night, this was the first time I seen her dancing, and it was wonderful. It was like, yes. You know. To get back to your point, guess what I did when I finished after 5 years? Just take one guess. I gave it to Willard. I gave it to him because it was created for him. And I just don't know how to get to that point where I have to support myself, and that's what I would like help in, and just be proud of who I am and what I do. But it's just the oral tradition that was taught to me that we always gift people with our work, and we are blessed as artists from God. When I do my artwork, I go into complete peace, absolute peace. It's a place that I can't get anywhere else. It's just, the whole time I'm creating the artwork, I'm in absolute nothingness. And it's just a peace it's a wonderful place to be. And I can be there as long as I, am creating this peace. And then when that piece leaves me, I go through a little bit of grieving and stuff, but to be able to see a piece again and to be able to see it dancing and being alive, it's just so wonderful. It's just like, wow, yes, that's cool. It's just one of the gifts that came back to me, is to be able to experience that. And I go to dances and I go to celebrations and I go here and there just to see if anybody's wearing my leggings or if anybody's wearing my pouch or whatever, but that's the life of an artist. The artist is actually going through a healing process, and they go into, it's not like a trance, but it's just kind of, you're just doing your thing here, and nothing in the whole wide world bugs you. It's just like you're just creating this piece and you're just alone with it, and it's just a wonderful thing to have, and it's a talent, and to hone that talent, I hope to be known, and to be able to be known, I guess I should introduce myself. So here goes. Saina al kasha juka yikhad diwisak. Ayan sha ayakhat. Deshitan yari khatsati. Deshitan dashkhan khatsati. Ka dashwedi dashkhan khatsati. Kayan yedi dashkhan khatsati. Ka panana dashkhan khatsati. Ka Irish dashkhan khatsati. Ka German dashkhan khatsati. And basically, I come from, I live in Whitehorse, the capital city of the Yukon Territory with 30,000 people there. And I continue my journey of 40 years to every single day of my life is creating an artwork. And right now I'm creating my children's, their early childhood education, and that takes full responsibility and time to be able to help them to become little artists and help them to hone their own gifts that they're born with. So, but yes, I would like to be known as an artist and an international artist, since Willard lives in the United States and I live in Canada. And that's my best piece. I spent 5 years doing it, and that's the best thing that I could offer to a physical thing to what I created. So that's an example. But I would like to try to become an artist where I'm living off of my artwork. And I don't know where there's a barrier there, and it's like I don't know if it's if I'm not supposed to sell. I know I'm not supposed to sell my atu, and I was trained that. But I can demonstrate it in my dances, and I can I can show the world and gift the world with what I create. But I just don't understand, what can I do? Should I go and do some prints or something and send it off to the world and say, hey, this is me, this is my website?
Thank you for your words. She was talking about how can she get recognized and make a living as an artist. The artist way, there's always ups and downs, always. there's months when you don't sell anything, and then all of a sudden you sell everything. And when I would complain to my teachers about that, they would say you're just paying your dues. There she is. And in Canada, because I live in Vancouver, BC, you can, through Canada Council Arts, they can set you up with putting together a business plan that you can tour demonstrating some of your work. I know Reg Davidson did it through the embassies. He sent it to the embassies, the Canadian embassies, and you can do, that's one way of doing it. Number one is, and it sounds easier said than done, is to claim it. That's something our people used to do, and they say you will it and it'll happen. Already you're a beautiful artist. I seen the regalia you wove because I made him the barriers that was wearing last night. And yes, part of it is you want to give your work away. I know that every artist feels that way. We want our own people to be able to afford and have these pieces to be used in ceremony. But number one is you have to value your work. And you value it, now you have to claim that the rest of the world will value it as well. Getting to the question or the comments that everybody had for you, including everyone, including what Preston was saying about having glass, and including the things that Bob was saying by spoken word. We need to, for all these cultural centers, we need to open and expand our horizons of what our culture and who we are as Indigenous people. Exactly what Clarissa was saying about gathering foods, just talking. What we're doing right now is something very old and very what our people used to do. Something that I used to do, and I talked to a lot of other artists, because this has been a discussion I've had with other carvers here locally, and I was glad to hear Preston say it as well. And I know the weavers do it, I know that carvers do it. Everybody from the Davidsons to Bill Reed to Norman Tate talked about duplicating, copying old pieces to understand those old masters. And those old masters would be brought up and down the coasts to share and deliver their works, and that showed your wealth. Bob was talking about we're on the cusp of this global explosion. I think we're there. I think we can initiate it ourselves. We need to decide our own future. Just like this woman who was talking about her work. What Clarissa was saying, it's no accident to be an artist. We're all here for specific reasons. Just like our spoken words, just like our clan leaders, our dance leaders. We choose our own future, and I think we need to do that as Indigenous people. Whether we do it in art, whether we do it in cultural centers or museums or art historians or artists or just mom and dads. Putting and claiming victory in our lives and not living in survival mode and getting beyond the hurts and the pains that were done to us. And yeah, it's horrible. But our people had survived since time immemorial because they always put the best foot forward and went beyond survival mode.
Whenever I hear questions or comments about a cultural center, I think that's something that's really necessary for us today. Although I don't know how or where the support is coming from or how you can get support for that. And I think it's just so important that we have art in our culture and continue to support it. But one of the things that I've been thinking about since I've been here is that just listening to Nora talk about her poetry and the work that Richard's been doing in the literature and how it's been collecting dust on the shelves and how they realized that they needed to apply it to to the community are to help. And so they started to think about the youth and how there's been a great spike in suicide. And this is so devastating. And when I think about the cultural centers, I think that if we had support to put those in place and we could teach young people that they have a right to put their voices out there in any medium that they choose, that they would gain self-esteem. And if we could show them that they can be proud of who they are, that they can accept the struggles that they've had, and then to move on, then maybe they can grow from there. And I think that there's so much damage that's been done that we need to really work hard together, and that art would be one of the things to bring us back. And when I saw that the young artist whose name's just slipped my mind, but he's doing the paper masks, and he went to New Zealand. Nick. Yes. Well, I was just so impressed when he was invited to a cultural center, I'm thinking that maybe they thought he would go there and do jewelry. But he went there and he just took over the computer lab and started doing these formulas so that he could make these masks out of paper that still have a representation of his place of origin. And he's proud of his history. So those are the things that we need to do. And I think it's really important to allow people to evolve, to work in different mediums. And one of the things is, since my mother was such a traditionalist and a master weaver, she would look at my work and say, or introduce me and say, here's my daughter, the crazy artist. But I knew that she loved me and was real proud. So here's a quote. I think one of the things that I also wanted to share with you is how inspiring it's been, and how all the different voices and from every venue has been so uplifting, and that we get our inspiration from so many different places, maybe not just our grandmothers, our uncles who are teaching us how to carve, but also from Western scholars. And there's a Western scholar by the name of James Clifford who wrote this wonderful essay in a book called Exhibiting Cultures, the Poetics and Politics of Museum Display. And so this is a quote that I've written down several times and carry with me. He writes, Indigenous artwork participating simultaneously in the market and museum networks and in tribal ceremonial and political context is a leading public manifestation of cultural vitality. And so that's what we need to strive for and support and nurture, is the vitality.
I'd like to take a second and respond, if that's okay. And thank you for bringing that quote. I have to read James Clifford quite a bit, actually, in my program. So it's helpful and encouraging to know that our own people think that those really, they're called theorists or historians, are okay, that we can use them. They're not just studying us, but we can use them to strengthen what it is, whatever, the aims and goals we have for what we are saying about ourselves. And the whole reason I'm in the doctoral program, that I made it my goal at 16 years old to go into the doctoral program, is Robin Wright, who's right here, the curator of Native American art at the Burke Museum. She came to my community and I was working tourism. I'm a product. I have been molded into the person that I am because of JOM, the JOM education program, and growing up as a dancer and having beading classes and having the basketry classes and going to culture camp in the summertime. It is the reason I am the person that I am today, and it molded the objective that I have for my life. And it was because we didn't have a cultural center that I went into art history, and I taught I came back to my community after graduating from the University of Washington in 2002, and I created a course called Tsimshian Studies, and it was the first time that a course in our high school had included our community's history, and it's still being taught. But I really felt that, and I led the JOM, the Children's Dance Group. I inherited the leadership of the group, and I just felt I started doing Tsimshian Culture Camp through the Boys and Girls Club, and I really felt that without a center, without a facility that was dedicated to our culture and our history and the passing on of this knowledge, and a safe place for our kids to know that it is more than okay to be themselves, but it's okay to explore the many things that come along with the contemporary battles that we have in terms of suicide, because suicide has hit all of our communities, and the biggest issue with that is self-esteem. And with working with kids and watching them grow in their knowledge of themselves and their history and their pride, and seeing the people that they become as a result of it, whether they're, I really emphasize when I teach, you don't have to be an artist, a carver, a basket weaver to know who you are, or be a dancer, because there's those pressures that they feel like well, I don't do those things, and they get shy about it, but they're so interested, but they don't have to do those things. They are those people. And I'm so grateful for your question, and I'm glad that it was brought to the table today. And I am inspired even more to continue on this path and to watch the facility. I'm going to keep an eye on your facility, Clarissa, up in Haines. Oh, I mean, not your facility, but the facility up in Haines, because I know that also I was talking with Irene Dundas, and in 2010 in Saxman in the Cape Fox area, that's their goal date for opening up their own cultural center. And as long as we are reflexive in the process of creating these centers, and we don't just create the museums in the way that they've learned, that they've grown to display us, but we create centers which we are open to all the ways that we know ourselves, it's going to be an incredible catalyst in what Bob was saying in terms of the explosion, I don't know how, there's many different ways of saying it, internationally, but also within our own communities. And did you have a question? That's my comment, and I just wanted to thank you for your question and also for your responses.
I have a comment. I was in the military for 22 years, retired, and traveled overseas. And the greatest pride I had when I was overseas was carrying around the American flag. I was so proud of being in the military, who I was, and what I did for my country. And someone talked about the identity earlier, about your identity as a Tlingit or a Tsimshian or a Haida. And I'm going somewhere with this. The other day I received the regalia from the Untitled. And without the artists, without the passion that you guys have, that all of you have, all artists, not just the ones in the panel, without the passion of what you guys do, I wouldn't have received nothing on Saturday. I wouldn't have a job as a caretaker. Ray wouldn't have a job as a caretaker. And Herman wouldn't have a job as a caretaker. if it wasn't for you as artists creating the regalia that we're caretaking. And I've heard several times, you have a great responsibility. You have a lot of responsibility. That's true. But my responsibility is going to come and go in a matter of maybe 20 years or 30 years after I pass away. But your responsibility as artists is going to go on telling our story of the Tlingit and Tsimshian and Haida for the next 3, 4, or 500 years. My responsibility is going to be gone in a very short period. Your responsibility is far greater than mine. And I just want to thank you for all that you're doing for us as clan leaders and as people. You're writing our stories. You're creating great works of art to tell the story of us long after we're gone. And I just want to say thank you. Sheesh.
Thank you very much. That was a wonderful comment. We started a little late, so I want to make sure that we're just going to go a little late to give these artists the time that they deserve. Would you like to take a seat?
Here we are going with a time limit again. Our ancestors never had this. They used to send someone outside to the beach. Where is the tide? It's still way out, Grandpa, it's still way out. We have time. I was going to come at you guys with both barrels, but after Bob made his speech, he knocked off one of my engines. Now I can only come at you with one. I want to know that if any of you artists that draw ever use any clan crests in your artwork, and if so, who gave you permission? The reason I'm asking you this is because a woman back in the 30s drew a picture of our clan hat. And she kept it for years. But when she moved to Seattle, she took pictures of it and then put them in a picture frame. People started buying them. And that was back just before the war. And just recently, not recently, maybe 7 years ago is recently, we were at celebration in Juneau. My nephew went down to the art center where they were selling art. And he said, "Uncle, you have to come down and see this. I'm not sure, but it sure looks like our hat." So I went down there with him. And sure enough, it was. It was a picture of our hat. The next day was Friday. We went to See Alaska because it was the See Alaska Art Center. And we asked them, "Who is sending you these to be sold?" And they looked through their files and they found who it was. We have his telephone number here if you'd like to call him. And we did. See Alaska. By the way, See Alaska took the phone bill. They paid for the phone bill. That's a joke, man. Hey, somebody's trying to shoot me down here. All my jokes don't get anything. But anyway, they did. We talked to that person. And that person apologized. We asked him to discontinue selling images of our clan hat. But would you believe it? He was trying to make a deal with me. He was trying to make a deal with me. And I said, hold it, hold it. You want to make a deal with me? Let me find out how many Koho people are here first. Maybe there's about 300 or 400 of us. Maybe 500. Then I'll make a deal with you. But what I'm trying to say too is that no one person can give permission to have a clan crest put on any artwork. If any of you came to me to ask my permission to have one of our clan crests put on your artwork, I'd have to call everybody, because this decision doesn't fall to one person. It doesn't. I hope that I clarify a few things by saying what I did. It's not my intention to hurt your feelings or to try to put down your artwork. Artwork is important. Just like Errol said a little while ago. Artists are important. They are the ones that make our regalias. They are the ones that put the images of our ancestors in wood, on animal furs. But at the same time too, what I'm trying to say too is that if any of you are putting images of art of a clan crest, even one little one, you're selling their artwork. You're selling their artwork. I mean, their crest. You're selling their crest. You're selling the people. And a little while ago, I heard you went to Mexico with your artwork. And you, I don't know, but I just caught part of it. Japan, did you go to Japan or did you send some there?
Malaysia.
Huh?
Malaysia. And Germany.
Oh. All this. I really can't say, don't know what else to say. I hope that you aren't using clan crests without permission. Maybe a lot of you make your own images. And it's good when they were telling the story, when one lady was saying that our children identify with those things. But I don't agree with using any clan crest without the permission of the clan. Otherwise, this clan house is going to come down on you if you do. This is a raven and eagle. And I hope that what I've said doesn't rub anybody the wrong way. But this is how I feel. I don't want my Koho people to think that I've sold their crest just so I myself can make money. It's not going to be that way. And the chief, the Chegasa, the Kat Yohan, the K.H. thank you, all of you, for listening to me. You guys are doing good work. But please, ask permission to do it. And sheesh, thank you very much.
Hold up there, Stan. We gotta say something first. 1 second, please.
I gotta let these guys respond, and then we'll come to you, Sten. No disrespect, but these are the artists on the panel. Thank you. Thank you for your, it's a very important issue that you've brought up. Also, another issue that you brought up is that time doesn't matter in the longhouse, right? So I'm not going to look at my watch. It is done when it's done.
Kunishchish, I'm not offended by what you said. I am a member of the Coho clan. You are my Coho father, leader, and I am humbled by your presence and your knowledge. I am, my foundation in art comes from my mother, Luknaax.adi from Yakutat, and I learned a great deal from her. As a contemporary artist, I want to let you know that I struggle with the issue of seeing clan art exploited, sold as business cards, replicated in Indonesia, used for the tourist industry. It hurts. So I also want to let you know that as a Coho, when I look at my work and make my work, it's not for money. It's the message. It's the content. I want to tell a story about how we exist, how we've struggled, and that we're still here. So thank you for sharing, and I'm honored that you're here and that other clan members are also here today. So I'm not offended. Thank you.
I too am not offended because I don't do clan art, crest art. As Gerry Hope asked a question, the first question was about that, about not understanding. He asked a question to an artist who was doing it because he didn't know the history. I know my history. I also know the history of my Nisga'a people. And when I responded to Gerry, was the explanation of knowing who you are, where you come from, what rights you have as an artist. The way we are taught with the Nisga'a is you do not produce things that are not yours. You only do that when you're requested by the person of that house, and they have respect by asking their chiefs. So thank you, because we're able to re-clarify that for everybody here. Thank you for the lesson. Thank you.
With great humility, I come, to this place. As I mentioned, I'm coming home to my great grandmother and grandfather's home, and there's a lot of things. I come here to learn, and I come here to listen, and I deeply respect. I'm privileged to be Tlingit, to be here, and I come here sharing, myself, and willingly and openly, I like to work with my own work, which is much more ambiguous kinds of sculpture on occasion, which more like things that are less representational, but there's probably some things that I have created that would be, you could probably categorize as crest art. But part of me coming here is to learn and to understand whatever everybody has to say, and I appreciate your comments, and I'm learning.
I'm glad that you brought up that subject. It's a very sensitive subject, and it's a reminder for all of us. I too have created artworks that are, many of them are commissioned, so I use the crest that they ask for. I will do duplicates if that is what the chief has requested, and it's okay. I will do images that are raven or duck-tailed tom that are mine. I will do a thunderbird if it's for a thunderbird. I will do a sea grizzly on a chilkat if it's for that particular clan and they've commissioned me. I totally, though, forgot that that's how we operate. I totally forgot that that is something that is one of our laws. And I realize that you put it into words.
Thank you again, all of you, for what you said. And the best part is coming up right now. Whatever you guys make, if there's a raven party going on there in Eagle, go to that party and put some money out. And if there's a Eagle party going on and you're a raven, go to that party and put some money up. What am I doing wrong? Man. Thank you.
So, I have to apologize to Wayne because I've overlooked him several times, and I'm really sorry about that. If you could, and he was before you stand, so I'll let Wayne go right now.
Good evening. My name is Yandy Kanieth. I am Auckland. I'm Takuquan. We spent a lot of time in Vancouver as well, working with the tourism and different outlets, tourism and galleries. I didn't do any, didn't get a lot of teaching when I first started out in the art world, but I did hear a lot of things relating to clan crests and so on, and the value of them. I traveled all over the world, looking at our art, walking into museums where they poster your pictures of our people's artwork, crests or not, smack right in front of you. They have the right to do that, and they do. They take the right somehow and put our crest designs on their walls and so on. Many people as well. I find it really strange that people would come down so heavy on our artists and so on, when there's companies out there in the US government and Canada government that would take our stuff and exploit it to the fullest. I feel really bad about that. I come home to Washington and they asked me to create designs, crest designs, for our own people. I don't charge our own people for the crest designs we do. I make the designs for them for free. I have been able to establish a network of art that I do and be able to create that crest designs for our children, for our elders. We're just starting to work on our elders, to get our elders together so that we can go through the crests and that they would wear and so on. So I do create crest art, but I don't sell it. But I do understand, and I work with a lot of family members in law, and we just talked about it today, about copyright of our stuff, our people's stuff. We talked about it, the intellectual and so on. They talk about the great companies out there that are using our art. They look around even in Sitka and some of the big companies here. You look at the newsletters and so on, the newspapers and so on, that also say the same thing. You see the designs on artwork or signs or advertisements. And so, I hope, and I guess my wish is too, is the same thing, that we come down as heavy as we do on the artists. So we come down as heavy on those companies that use our designs, museums and so on that use our designs to advertise whatever they're doing. And so that our artists do create great, inspiring, and wonderful things that we love to do. I have been privileged to work with Dempsey Bob, who's a master carver. I'm privileged to be a student for a few years, and he talked about a degree, getting a degree in art, getting your master's degree in art, and so on. We don't have any schools, we can't regulate our own art. We're unable to regulate our own art because we don't have any schools. There's no curriculum that's related to exactly how far we're going to go with this and how do we sit in the world. If we say we are number one in the world, then we should have that. Be able to back that up through our own curriculums and be able to teach our own children a curriculum that will build and give our children not only the stepping stones to becoming a master in the art. I think about that all the time. Think about the schools. We talk about a culture center. We just started a culture center in Athlin for our children and so on. It's and I was, I think I want to dream big. I want to dream bigger than just that. So I thought about it, that New Zealand is one of the biggest places they talk about that has art where it's regulated, where they give out a master's degree. They've invited me to Germany to give me a master's degree. It's hard to get a master's degree in art here in Northwest Coast Art because there's no schools that give out those degrees other than Kasan in Canada. And I'm not even sure it's recognized worldwide as a master's degree, but Germany has been able to open up a school in Liechtenstein near Dresden, which gives out a master's degree. They said they claim it to be one of the first in the world to give out a master's degree in carving and traditional carving, and from all over the world that they gather a curriculum from. So I've been fortunate enough to go to that and to have a chance to be able to get a master's degree from the outside world. But it's the people that we look at here that they say you should be able to do it all, not only just painting a drum, but carving a mask and so on, all the different steps of the art. So I question a lot of things too, and struggle my way through it, and learn at the other end that you get better and stronger as you go through the art and become better at recognizing the different things that we should and want to do as artists, and give our own people the recognition that they need, and somehow be able to give them a degree for the work that they do, and so on. Thank
you, Wayne, for your comments. And unless in a standstill up there, I'm not sure if he's wanting to ask questions, and I also thank you for your patience. It's very meaningful, the words that you shared with us, Wayne. And if there is another question in the audience, I'm not sure, Steve, how you wanted to wrap it up since this is the last session of the conference, but I think that before we start bringing this to a close, we should allow our artists here not only allow them to have one more opportunity to say something if there's something that has come to mind that you wish to share, that you wish to end this session with. So, is there anyone? Clarissa? How about we'll just go in order just like we started. Here we go, Jerry Springer, Clarissa versus Preston.
No, I don't know. I just enjoyed, being a part of this. Thank you for asking me in the last minute to participate. I hope, in any case, I really do believe that we were talking about putting the artists gathering together in Juneau during celebration, and Clarissa said, I said, how are we going to do this? How are we going to, make this happen with all these people? We need, gosh, how many people are we going to need? She goes, I want to get the subsistence, people that bring their food, their native foods, and then we get, the sisterhood and the brotherhood together to bring, that they would maybe help out in the kitchen or something, because I really feel like that it is all together. You don't just have an arts center over in the corner and those guys just do what they do. We're working together, I feel, and the more, maybe it shouldn't feel off limits in a way, and I think that will be a way of building the community in any of these art centers, because I think we all learn from each other, and that will be very helpful if everybody feels welcomed by the artists and what they're doing. It's not a separate thing, and we should treat it that way.
Oh, we're going in order. I think everything that was shared, and I'd like to thank Wayne for saying that about, I think what's really sad sometimes is we're harder on ourselves than we are on outsiders. And I know with my own Nisga'a people, that's something that we're working on, and it's very difficult. And that starts off with the families. It starts off with the individual families, and that's the only way we can do any kind of change. I think that having forums like this to be able to communicate is the only way we're going to be able to, as artists and as Aboriginal people and as human beings, to lead by example. And I really thank the organizers for putting this together, and the people of Sitka for allowing me as an outsider, a Nisga'a man, to come and as an artist and as a speaker for my house to come and have the opportunity to share a little bit of who I am with so many people. Thank you.
Thanks to everybody for being here and being so patient. And it's interesting how these, almost every one of these sessions that I've attended and been part of have become so intensely emotional. And it's all part of learning. So I appreciate that as well. I think as a contemporary artist, the main thing that I would like to share with you is that it is a real struggle being a contemporary artist. On one side of our cultural heritage, it's very strict. We have protocol and we need to honor that. And on the other side, in order to fit in to the mainstream world, you have to leave that behind. So where are you? Who are you? What is your voice? How can it be manifested in the work that you do? So you have to really work to figure that out, to make sure that you respect both sides. But I think what's really important is that as an individual, that you should not limit your voice, and that it's really important for those viewers, for your audience to know, as a Tlingit, that you do exist today, that you do have a voice, that you have a strong heritage to pull from, that you can use that heritage to resist stereotypes, to resist all the degrading things that have happened to you before, to also use as an example that you're here today, that you know about your veterans in the war, you know about those people that you've lost, you know about the injustice that has happened, and that it's important that not only your community faces those and addresses those, but the community at large, and not to use it as a forum to just talk about negative things, but to use it as a forum to let people know that we do have a voice and that we have evolved and that we do exist. And I think that's the main thing the premise that I work with. Thank you.
I just want to say thanks to Wayne for reminding us about what can take place as far as, being hard on our own selves than we are on the outside world or other people. If we do indeed create cultural centers in each town within the next 20 years, 10 years would be best, as quickly as possible before many of our fluent Tlingit people, language people, are gone. It would be really cool if they were in each town, and each town has a prominent strength. Yes, each town pretty much will teach the language, song, dance, subsistence, wellness, all of these things that help create a well-rounded human being in the Northwest Coast. That each center could have possibly a prominent strength based on a strength offering a particular strength, like say, Haynes or Juneau or whatever. Like, okay, if we were to take Haynes, for example, what are the strengths in Haynes that come from the landscape and natural resources and the talents of the individuals and community? Excuse me. It's an exciting thought, because tourism is not going to be as strong as it has been. It'll almost become impossible unless, of course, we go to other kinds of alternative methods of resources that are not involving oil and gas. Anyway, I just want to thank you all for coming and helping us close the Clan Conference through this venue. And thank you very much. Good.
Thank you, Steve, for creating this, working on this with all your people that I don't know how big your team is that you work with to do this, but I think you've done an awesome job of putting this program together. Art today, I get asked a lot if by tourist visitors that come in and visit with me at the Totem Park, they're assuming this is a dying art and this art form is from the past. Well, it is a part of our past, but it's far from dying art. Contemporary, traditional, so many questions out there, but we're not a dying art. We're a continuing, living, breathing, thriving. There are things we use today that didn't exist years ago. There's lots of new stories to tell. We're moving on and continuing. Thank you for the opportunity.
I'd also like to thank Steve for the opportunity to moderate this panel. It's really been my honor, and especially thank you for the artists for honoring my request that you're on the panel, because many, like Evelyn Vanderhoop, she had a family emergency, had to leave, and so there are a few artists that also wanted to participate. So I'm really, really thankful for you being here today, and also for our audience. Thank you for witnessing.
Thank you, Miquel, for agreeing to moderate this panel at next to the last minute, and all the panelists. Thank you too. It all came together at the last minute, and it couldn't have been better. And I think it's a great way to end our conference, and a great way to start thinking about the next one in a year or two. I'd like to extend a couple of invitations also. For anyone who would like to attend a traditional ceremony in support of the Cynthia William family, who is Raven Doc Dane Tan, that'll be at the Coho House on Catleon Street at 5:30. Also, there's a seafood dinner fundraiser for the Cynthia Williams family, 3 to 6 at the A&B Hall just across the street. Yes, tonight. So in closing, I would like to end with a prayer, and we'll ask Ida to share that with us.
Just before we close, I would like to make a comment. I was not able to attend the meeting about the clans and how important the clans and clan laws are. I know when I was growing up that it was very important in our household. We never ever represent any other clan. And if you do, you have to pay really big money to that clan for hurting their feelings and for trying to steal their identity. And my parents were really conscious of these things, and so but before my mother passed on, she made a large book giving us our clan names for our family and for my cousins, her brother's children, so that we don't make a mistake and use somebody else's clan name. That's really important. And I just wanted to emphasize how much I appreciate this meeting, and for Steve and all of the helpers that did such a marvelous job to feed us so well. I ate so much fish, I'll be good for 2 years. I want to thank the panel and for Herman for bringing up such an important comment about the clans and the clan emblems. And that is a really good lesson to all of us. I myself, when I retired from work, I decided I wanted to make some extra money when I went away on a trip. I was going to a workshop in Toronto. So I hurried up and I did a whole bunch of sewing, and I sold it. And then the next week I went down there to look at it, and my sewing was exactly half of what they paid me. They got half more than what they paid me. And I was so upset, I threw my sewing in a corner, and I told my husband, never again will I ever sew for sale. I'm going to make my money by my mouth. And I have been trying ever since. Thank you. Gunas cheese on Yatkistani, Gunas cheese sweet I took ya had these had to ho ya adi. Gunas cheese wet hen who took Gunas cheese yakaha. Thank you everybody for listening to me. Ach anchau stun haidlech ej genik khasati khawak shik yenesni edzaqahini ha shagun isati kakaktusti ada etkiu aqayach yunachtuskik sishaje naqek yaha shiga itudach etwisku hakoshi kasagan SOK Hatunatet, yet Zahanitin, Kairahakasnech isati Kaha Ankhao. O my God, unite the hearts of thy servants and reveal to them thy great purpose. May they follow thy commandments and abide in thy laws. Help them, O God, in their endeavors and grant them strength to serve thee. O God, leave them not to themselves, but guide their steps by the light of knowledge, and cheer their hearts by thy love. Verily thou art their helper and their Lord. Gunlachish